Welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Ryan Mauser. We are back once again. What a weekend it was. We had the Final Four. We had some NBA action going on, but really wanted to start with that Final Four as we saw Baylor top Houston in a good contest. It was Houston tried to fight back in and just couldn't overcome Baylor's dominance on both defense and offense. So Baylor moves on to the Final Four, to the national championship, which will be played in, as of this recording, a couple hours. But the big game of the two was Gonzaga versus UCLA, which going into the game, it was Gonzaga heavily favored. Obviously, they have the perfect season still going on. And UCLA, a team that was the surprise of the tournament, going in from the first four all the way to the Final Four. It was extremely impressive. It was a back-and-forth contest, one of the best college basketball games I've ever seen, and one of the best basketball games I've ever seen. It was a back-and-forth contest. No lead, I think, got bigger than 7 is what they said. And throughout the game, the final few minutes, overtime, it was all crazy packed action, and props to Gonzaga for pulling off the win, and Jalen Suggs hitting a a little more than half court, banked in buzzer beater to send Gonzaga to the national championship game. So congrats to Gonzaga, and thank you so much for a great game, and hopefully we get a great national championship as well. But props to UCLA. Every game they were in, they were presumably the underdogs, and they just kept fighting their way through. Mick Cronin had his guys playing hard, playing to win, and put on a show. Johnny Juzang, Tiger Campbell, all those guys. It was one of those magical, true Cinderella runs where you had an 11 seed knocking off a 1 seed in Michigan, giving the number 1 overall seed in Gonzaga a run for their money. And the fact that they had the game go to overtime, as well as were very close to beating Gonzaga. And no one's made that look easy. No one's come close. Gonzaga all tournament had won all their games by double digits, and it took everything Gonzaga had to hang on and to win and to move on to the national championship and to keep their perfect season alive. So big-time props to Gonzaga and UCLA, both teams. It was a great showing on Saturday night. Was extremely excited. And then props to Arizona and Stanford in the women's national championship game, as Stanford held off Arizona, who, in their own right, went on an incredible run, knocking off UConn and being in the national championship game, and then fighting back after they got down somewhat big against Stanford and had a shot at the end, missed the potential game winner. But props to Cardinals, props to this for winning the national championship on the women's side. But thank you, Arizona, also for giving us one of those incredible runs as well. This is what we missed last year when we didn't have March Madness going on. Was these, I don't want to say unknown schools, because UCLA has 11 national championships, and this is what they expect over there. But an 11 seed going through the tournament, knocking off teams they weren't supposed to beat, getting to the Final Four. No one really had them going there. A lot of people say that the Pac-12 gets disrespected because people don't stay up late watching them. They're not on any big-time networks to where they're able to be seen. I mean, the Pac-12 network, who really does have it? I don't. It's tough to find Pac-12 games. So, and it's really what March Madness is all about in college basketball. You saw, look at UCLA, who had one of their top recruits decide to go to the G League instead of play for them. They had some injuries. They fought through a lot of adversity. And Jalen Suggs, who's a guy who has really stepped up and put his draft stock even higher and really showed that he is a top 5, if not top 3 pick. Drew Timme, incredible. That guy is a lot of fun to watch. I was so surprised to find out he was only a sophomore. So we will hopefully get some more of Drew Timme going on, the stash. And then obviously tonight's game, We won't. I won't get to react to it right now. I assume Gonzaga is going to win because I just look at Gonzaga and think they're so talented at every spot. Not to take anything away from Baylor, because Baylor has been right there with Gonzaga. I mean, the entire season we've had two clear-cut favorites. It was Gonzaga and it was Baylor. And when we didn't get that matchup early on in the season where it was Baylor versus Gonzaga because of a COVID issue within the Baylor program, it was a bummer because it was a true heavyweight fight early on in the season that many thought this will be a preview of the national championship game. And because so much crazy stuff happens on the way to the national championship game, we thought we might not get to see this matchup just because someone can get knocked off, an upset can happen. But we are getting the top two seeds in the national championship game, which is nice to see. And Baylor is incredible also. I mean, they got three guards out there at the same time. Davion Mitchell, Jared Butler, and Maceo Teague, all of those guys. It's a clinic when sometimes they have four guards out there and one big, and it's tough to defend. They're a tough team on defense, able to shut down guys and just really force you into uncomfortable shots. But I lean Gonzaga because at the end of the day, when you have the better player in Jalen Suggs, Drew Timme, I think, is better than anyone that would be on Baylor. No offense to Baylor. I just look at Gonzaga and think they have too much firepower. They are just clear-cut better than everyone else in college basketball right now. And I'm assuming we're going to have a really, really good game tonight. I can't wait. I'm really excited for it to begin and to see what happens. I'm not ready to say goodbye to college basketball, though. That is for sure, as this has been such a fun month plus. The season itself, college basketball, the way they handled everything and navigating through the craziness. There were some COVID stoppages, teams handling missing players, and just to be able to get through the season and to get us to this point and to give us a March that maybe felt even better because we were not given a March Madness last season. It's really exciting for the game, but tough to say goodbye because this college basketball season was like anything we've ever seen before. Like many of the other sports we've seen, it was a weird, strange season that we weren't expected, that we weren't used to. But it was been really phenomenal. And tonight we get the two, or as I'm recording this tonight, you guys will hear this tomorrow, so you'll know who the winner is by then. But to get the two best teams at the end, that doesn't happen often, is thrilling, and I can't wait and hope it's just as good of a game as advertised. It'll be tough you would imagine it'd be tough to surpass what happened on Saturday night. I mean, UCLA versus Gonzaga was a classic. That's a game that's going to go down in history. That shot Jalen Suggs hit is one of those immortal, will stand the test of time. I heard it described as my generation's Christian Laettner shot. So you look at that and you go, okay, well, how is Gonzaga and Baylor going to top that? Can they? They can't possibly live up to any expectations that game puts on it. But, I mean, you look at it now, we have the two best teams in college basketball playing for the national championship. It's win, and whoever wins, it's their first national championship in school history. So there's so much on the line. Obviously, you win a national championship. That's enough said. You put that. But to be the guys that bring your school their first national championship is something that forever every single player will be able to tell that story and to look back on those memories and have them fondly sitting on their heads, on their minds, that they brought either Gonzaga or Baylor their first national championship. But again, it's just props to the NCAA, who does a lot of things wrong, and we don't want to get into that necessarily right now. But for the fact that they managed a whirlwind of a year and so many obstacles, so many circumstances to dance around. Just props to everyone involved, all the play-by-play color men, people working behind the scenes, camera, production, just to really give us a special season and a special March. It was a blast, and it's sad to see it end tonight, but also exciting because we do get a national championship game. So I can't wait for that to go down. And yeah, you can watch and you'll see who really is the best team, who proves it tonight that they're the better team. Luckily, both teams are healthy. No one's going to be missing. No one's hurt. No one's out. It's full strength. Here we go. The matchup we've been waiting for all season. Baylor Gonzaga, I cannot wait. And now these guys get to kind of put a cherry on top of their season. A guy like Suggs can really solidify his draft positioning by a game tonight. Everyone will remember the shot he made. Then the game winner, jumping on the table. He said he's always wanted to do that, wanted to be Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant. Love that. But if he comes out tonight and tops that performance and has a really great game, and he does lead Gonzaga to a win, I mean, you could easily be able to move him into the top 2. I mean, I still think that Cade Cunningham will be the number 1 overall pick no matter what. But from there on, it could really be anyone between Mobley, Green, Suggs. I feel like I'm leaving out many different people, but it could be anybody. And if Suggs finishes off a perfect season for Gonzaga, goes out and balls on top of the game winner, you can easily say and make a case for him that he is the number 2 guy. Now, again, it would depend on who's picking that at the number 2 spot and what happens. And obviously, if someone decided he wanted to go number 1, then that's off the table. But it's really that moment of March leaves a very lasting impression. It's the last thing evaluators will see of you in actual game moments. That's what a lot of these guys can go improve tonight, is showing that, hey, I am this potential perennial all-star, or I am the guy that you want to put your franchise's keys to, give your franchise's keys to. So it's really is one of those, what is your lasting moment? Because you would assume as a freshman he's going to leave. He's not going to come back. He won't be hanging around in Gonzaga for next year. He's going to go to the draft. So use this moment as putting your stamp on that program and leaving them with a great finish to what has already been a fantastic season. I thought it was pretty cool that on the Gonzaga call is Adam Morrison. Adam Morrison, probably the best Gonzaga player, one of the best Gonzaga players in school history, in college. And he was on the call, and obviously he had the heartbreaking loss to UCLA in his season. And he got to see a little bit of revenge happen as Gonzaga this year beat UCLA in a heartbreaking fashion for their end. So he was on the call. He's their color man, and I thought that was pretty cool. You could hear him shouting, yes, yes, and all the excitement he had in his school going on and winning and really continuing what has been a great season. And that program always seems to be, I don't want to say looked down on, but there's always that sense of, oh, well, Gonzaga's good, but they don't play in a conference. They don't play in a big-time conference. They haven't played anybody this season. So can we really put them at number 1? Can we really put them as a 1 seed? Are they really the top team? And this year they've just come out and proven that, hey, you can say all you want about the conference we play in, about that we don't play anyone, we don't match up against anyone. And they came out and they've dominated every single team that they've played except for UCLA. And UCLA was scrappy, tough, good, and gave them a run for their money. And I don't want to say UCLA even lost that game. Gonzaga just won it. And on the post-game show, I heard Clark Kellogg say that UCLA didn't lose the game. They just ran out of time. And that's a perfect sentence statement to make, is that, yeah, UCLA didn't lose the game. It's just they had no more time on the clock. Gonzaga was the last team with the ball when time ran out, and they put up that shot, and it went in and gave us that historic moment. So I thrilled with the season that we got and with what happened and everything that went on with this season. Hopefully we get the cherry on top tonight. Gonzaga and Baylor face off and give us one more shining moment to end the college basketball season. It should be a great game. Cannot wait to see what happens. I mean, hey, this is going to be the last college basketball game till November, October, whenever they kind of get those games going, and you're going to miss college basketball. It's been a tremendous season, so I'm excited. Can't wait to see what happens. Again, I'm going to take Gonzaga. I don't want to give a score because you just don't know. I think it'll be tight in the end. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. I think it'll be a close game. Both these teams are really, really good on both sides of the ball. But I'll lean Gonzaga, and I'll say, oh, God, they'll win. Let's go 76-72. 72. Yeah, 72. 76-72 is what I'll say. Gonzaga wins, finishes off the perfect season, which hasn't happened since, God, I think the last team to actually make it to the championship game was Larry Bird's Indiana State team, and they ended up losing to Magic Johnson at Michigan State. So it's been quite a long time, and so let's see it happen. Let's see some more history tonight and finish off what has already been a strange season. And then all eyes focus on the NBA draft, and everything that's going to be happening then. We're getting closer to NBA playoffs. Things have started to take shape. The buyout market has happened. Andre Drummond's a Laker. LaMarcus Aldridge is a net. Blake Griffin's a net. We'll see some more moves happen. But I do want to get into the NBA here next coming up. And one team in particular who it has been struggle city, and it has not looked good. I don't want to say there was a lot of expectations for them, but when you have some players of caliber on a team, you expect a little bit more, and it's been a struggle at least the last 16 games. And I want to talk about the Warriors, who are coming off a loss to the Hawks last night, which that can't happen. That should not have happened. It was ugly, and they just too many fouls. And so I want to get into that and talk about where the Warriors are at, because it's getting to crunch time now. It's they have to make a move. They have to make a push. What do they have left in the gas tank? Because you're running out of games, and they're now only a little bit up on the Pelicans. I think a half game or a game up on the Pelicans for that last play-in spot. And this is a team who, coming into the season, even without Klay Thompson, I had them pegged in I thought top 5 maybe, top 5 at least, the kind of range of if Steph is completely healthy, then they are. And we've seen that when Steph is not there, it's really, really ugly. And it's been, even with Steph, some games very ugly. I mean, they had a historic loss to the Raptors that was just, they got down by 60 at one point. So lots going on with the Warriors, lots of issues there. We do want to get into some more NBA talk. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets just continue to roll and show teams that they're going to be really, really tough to deal with in the playoffs, and they haven't even had Kevin Durant yet. The trio hasn't played tons of games together, so that's going to be scary once they truly get together. I still think they all are vulnerable, as I've shared before, but I'll get into that some more. So we really want to get into it. We'll get into the Warriors here next, but stay with us, and we'll be right back on the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you guys for tuning in, hanging around, and listening. Always appreciate it. Go ahead and like, subscribe, do whatever you need to do to get our content. We have plenty of podcasts for you out there on the GSMC Podcast Network. So whatever is your cup of tea, you can find it on there. Just go give us a look. And again, share with us so that more people can find out some content that they may be missing out in their life, because we got some great content out there all over the place. So go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, share, please. So I was just talking about the Final Four and the national championship. Yeah, I'm leaning Gonzaga. Give me Jalen Suggs and that crew. No offense to Baylor. Baylor's been awesome. I've really enjoyed watching them this season. I just think that Gonzaga has a little bit more firepower and the better players, or at least better player, specifically in Suggs and Timmy. So we'll see what happens. I just hope really great game. That's all you can ask for in the end. But a team that may be hoping that Jalen Suggs falls to them, because it's been a rough go of it. And the Warriors, who it's been a weird season for them, obviously dealing without Klay Thompson, who tore his Achilles on NBA draft night, and so you knew going into it that championship this season was likely out the window. I mean, you lose not your best player, but your second best player, and obviously it's going to make some changes to expectations. But the fact that you still had Steph Curry, you still had Draymond Green there, Steve Kerr, and that coaching staff, you went and looked and said, okay, well, barring another catastrophic or major injury, this is a playoff team. Yeah, they'll have a rookie in James Wiseman, but that's a top 2 pick. You expect that to give you some contribution and some added firepower. And yeah, there's been a bit of a learning curve for Wiseman, and he hasn't necessarily taken off running with his play. He's shown flashes here and there, but again, he's looked like a rookie, which again, he's 19 years old. So that's bound to happen. You don't expect him to come right in right away and contribute to a championship team. It's going to take some time. But the Warriors are in a tough spot because you do have Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson, who is hurt right now, but they're getting paid lots and lots of money, and there's expectations. It's a team that went to 5 straight finals. Winning is in their culture. It's in their blood. It's in their DNA. It's what they're about. And after last season, where they had the worst record in the NBA, yeah, they didn't have Klay Thompson. It was the season after they lost Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry played in only 5 games last year. So that was to be expected. That you can chalk that up to a punted season because of injuries. Fair or not, right or wrong, that's what happened. Is they lost their 2 best players, 3 if you include Kevin Durant leaving in free agency. So yeah, of course they were going to be a bottom feeder team. But this season, coming in, it was okay. Well, those excuses, you can't really hold those up anymore because you are getting Steph Curry back. And Steph Curry has not been the reason that this team is bad. Obviously not. He is one of the best players in NBA history, one of the best players in the league today. He's played as well as he could, and he's carrying the team as much as he can, but it has not been enough. I mean, the Warriors, coming out of the last segment, I was saying, the Warriors have lost or won 4 games of their last 16. It's really bad. It's not going well. It's looked pretty ugly in times. Yeah, Steph didn't play in that game versus the Raptors, but to get down by 60, you get down by 60 against anyone, it's a bad look. And a Raptors team that was 1-13 in the month of February, that's really bad. That's just unacceptable. You can't have that happening. It's just, especially when you're fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, this is a team who there are expectations still. They are still at least expected to be in the playoffs. Now they are barely holding on to the last spot in the play-in tournament. It's a long fall from grace from NBA championships and finals appearances to be scratching and clawing for a play-in tournament. Now, obviously, Klay Thompson's not there, and they lose that firepower. And Draymond Green's not the offensive scorer that you would hope. He's going to initiate the offense and get things set, but he's not going to drop 20 points for you. Wiggins has been pretty solid this season. Kelly Oubre has been very inconsistent, and there's reports today that I do want to get into too as well that focus on Kelly Oubre. But this is a team. It's been a struggle, and take away the Klay Thompson injury, they still have too much talent to be the 10 seed right now. I mean, Kelly Oubre wants to be a max type player. He wants to get paid big time, $20 million a year type guy. He doesn't want to, like he said, he's a starter in this league. He's not coming off the bench. Andrew Wiggins, a former number 1 overall pick, coming over to the Warriors, it should help him, and it has that. He's not the number 1 guy. He's not looked at as being, hey, we need you to do everything. We need you to be the offensive focal point. We need you to lead the team on defense. He's kind of fallen into the role of number 2 option, clearly behind Steph, but they also need him to get it going on certain nights if Steph's having a cold night, if they need a go-to scorer at times, if Steph gets double-teamed. It's give it to Wiggins and see what he can do. And some nights it looks like he wants to do that and can do that. Other nights he's very passive and just kind of goes with the flow and goes with the motion. And that's what you're going to get from Wiggins. You're not expecting him to be this vocal, outspoken, takeover guy. He has abilities to take over at times and to knock some shots down and be a huge part of the offense. But the way he's wired, it's not takeover central. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if he would be perfect fitting in with them if they had Klay Thompson this season, and he would be more of a third scorer as opposed to the second. When this team gets Klay Thompson back next year, if Wiggins is still here, I think that'll be a huge, even more benefit to them. Now, granted, getting Klay back because he's coming off 2 major leg injuries, you do have some hesitation now that, well, is he going to be the same guy? Because you don't know. Draymond Green, it's been a strange season. I mean, when he's out there with Steph, you can see that he does have a more impact on the game because he's playing with a smart player. Draymond's probably one of the smartest players in the league we have. We heard his comments about him being the best defensive player in all time in his eyes. And it's tough when you have guys who maybe are young or don't have that level of IQ to know what spots they're supposed to be in with the snap of a finger. Then Draymond may be in the right spot and they aren't, and it gives up an easy basket and it looks bad, and that causes his frustration to go off. And so it's just looked off this year. And that loss to the Hawks last night, allowing the Hawks to shoot 45 free throws, you're not beating anyone. If you're giving up 45 free throws, you're fouling that many times. How is that happening? Who is that on? I saw Juan Toscano-Anderson talked about that loss was on him. He had 3 fouls in the 6 minutes he's out there. That's unacceptable, and Steve Kerr has gotten a lot of the blame. There's been questions about, well, what is he doing? What changes is he making happen? He's not adjusting to what this team needs to be doing. He doesn't have the same guys anymore, so he needs to make some changes. And I think it's a mixture of everything. It's these guys who are still learning how to play with Steph and still learning how to play with Draymond fully as complementary pieces, but also you don't have your second best scorer, your best defender anymore. KD's not walking through that door. You got a 19-year-old rookie who played in 3 games in college trying to figure out on the spot what he's supposed to be doing, how he's supposed to be attacking the basket, where he's supposed to be at on defense, all while expecting to contribute to a playoff team. It's a lot to ask of a 19-year-old. I mean, hell, what were you doing at 19? I know I was not anywhere near capable of being on that type of a stage. It was, we don't want to go down that road of what I was doing. But it's that concept of, remember, he's 19. It's going to take some time. And big men always seem to take longer to develop anyways. And so it's a tough spot for him to be in. You hear this, are they chasing wins? Are they trying to develop? They're trying to do a mixture of both. They want to win, and they want to develop James Wiseman as they go, because you took him number 2 overall. You are expecting big things from him. That should be your future franchise player right there if you took him that high, especially if he was off limits in any trade talks that you were talking about doing. That's you want to develop him, but at the same time, you do have Stephen Curry and Draymond Green, who they're not getting any younger. Steph has battled some injuries this year, and now you wonder, will he ever be able to play a full season completely injury-free? You don't know anymore. I mean, once injuries start to happen, they're bound to happen more. They're not going to slow down as you get older. So it's really they should be in win now mode, because you have to take advantage of having one of the best players ever to play the game on now a somewhat limited timeline. You don't have Steph forever. So how do you make both happen? How do you develop your future while also taking advantage of your current? It's a tough situation to be in. Can you say Steve Kerr hasn't made the best of that? Yes, you can. That's fair, and he's open to being criticized. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. Everyone criticizes someone for something. It's bound to happen. But it just seems like we're constantly seeing the same things unfold and not change. Why is it that Steph is always sitting for the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter? At some point, you got to adjust. You got to, hey, well, let's get him out there sooner before we get down by 7 points like we did last night. Or before we get down by 9 points. Now we have even limited amount of time to get back in the game or to shrink a lead. There's just, why is it that Wiseman, who it plays well in the first half and then disappears or is out of the rotation? Why is it that we keep getting these other guys to get playing time and continuously allowed to make mistakes? But he makes one mistake and he's out. It's fair to be critical of Steve Kerr, and that's not denying that he's been a good coach for them. Obviously, he's a champion. Now you can say that he had tremendous amount of talent. Yeah, no one's going to deny you that he had some of the top players in the NBA, but he was still able to get the best out of them. Now you're looking and seeing, okay, well, now that you don't have that super high level of talent at most of your starting positions, now you got to elevate these guys. Now you got to get the most out of James Wiseman, Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, Kelly Oubre. And what do you do with Kelly Oubre? What happens now? And so it's been a very challenging season for the Warriors, and for Steph Curry's getting very frustrated. After 45 free throws, he's constantly being asked, well, how do you guys How do you fix fouling? How do you not let them get so many free throws? And what do you do? And he spoke to the media at the game, and I'll paraphrase. He said, he asked these same questions every single game. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. And he's not a guy that is short for answers. He usually has something to say and usually knows, hey, well, we'll get better here. And it seems that this season has, I don't want to say worn him down, but I mean, you're coming off of constant winning and constant competing for championships and high-level basketball play, high-level IQ, and it probably takes some time and patience for him and Draymond to kind of roll with the punches and take some tough losses and some games where normally the Warriors are winning those games and they're not getting blown out by 60 or blowing a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter or losing to the Atlanta Hawks because you fouled someone and sent them to the free throw line 45 times. It's going to take a lot for this team to kind of right the ship, and they're running out of time, and there's not tons of games left. They still do have time. They're still in a position of, I don't want to say power because they're not really in a position of power, but they are in a position that they can still make a run at this thing and be in position for a playoff spot because they are in the 10th spot and they are still in the play-in tournament at this moment. Now, a couple more losses and a couple more wins for some other teams, and now you're battling not only to be in the play-in tournament, but to not fall so far behind that you're just playing games to raise your level of positioning. Because if you're the 10 seed, then you're in the play-in tournament, but you're the last spot. If they lose a couple more games, they're in that 12th seed, 12th spot in the standings. Now you're just going to have to win games to jump other teams to be a part of the play-in tournament. So, I mean, again, you don't want to count out the Warriors and Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr, because at the end of the day, if you were betting on any of these teams to be in the play-in tournament and to win the play-in tournament, you'd go with the guys that have 3 championships, 5 finals appearances. You'd roll with those guys. You'd feel comfortable putting your money on them. But they're not the question. They're not the concern. It's, are they going to have enough guys helping them out? Does this team have enough firepower, contribution, whatever it is, to where if Steph only has a 15-point night, are they doomed? Because right now it seems like if Steph doesn't go supersonic and otherworldly, well, they're not winning games. They're not beating up on the Hawks. They're not beating the Raptors. The Hornets are besting them. So what's gonna happen when they match up against the Pelicans and they're going against Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson? Lonzo Ball has a career night where he shoots 9 threes now because he just set a career at 8. Are they able to overcome some of their deficiencies? It'll be interesting to see. And for so long, you looked at this team and you went, of course they will. I mean, they have Steph Curry, they have Draymond Green, they have Kevin Durant, they have Klay Thompson. 2 of those guys are not here. One of them's not coming back anymore. So you still have Steph Curry, you still have Draymond Green. You still have Steve Kerr. They have to figure something out. Because otherwise, why are you not just trading off Draymond or sending him to a contender? Because you have James Wiseman, you just go, well, that's our future, so we'll just plan for it. No, you want to take advantage of the guys you have right now and teach Wiseman, this is what it means to be a champion. This is what it means to every day, day in and day out, know what you're competing for. That you're not competing for to win a random Sunday night game. It's not you're competing to try and build that championship level intensity play, so that when it comes to the playoffs and then you're in a play-in tournament game and it's win or go home, they're ready to roll and they got it locked in and loaded. And you look at that team and you go, okay, yeah, this is this is kind of who I remember, because there was a sense of every time that someone played the Warriors, they got their best shot because they were the best team. And now a team might still be giving them their best shot because they did get destroyed by the Warriors for 5 years. And now the Warriors can't counteract with that right hook anymore, and they don't have the same jab anymore to throw at you, and that they go on those third quarter runs and just dominate you, and it game's over, and Steph and Clay and Draymond aren't playing the fourth quarter. It's a changing of the guard. It's an adjustment, and so far they haven't adjusted great, but luckily they do still have some time, and we'll see what happens. So tough spot for the Warriors right now. It's been a bit of a free fall. We'll see what happens with them, because they got to pick it up quick, and teams aren't going to slow down on them, and they're not going to take it easy on them. So I want to get into here next was sticking with the Warriors and some stuff that happened for some comments from a former Warrior on his podcast, Andrew Bogut, talking about Kelly Oubre and his comments and how they were taken. So we'll get into that, and what else does it mean for this team? Are they in complete chaos and ruins and everything's downhill, and can they adjust, or does someone have to leave? So we'll get into that next. It's the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. So I just spent a decent amount of time talking about the Warriors. A whole segment and their struggles this year and what's going on with them. And I still think at the end of the day, they have Steph Curry. They'll be able to at least get into the playoffs. And whether they make noise, went to the brink of a series, who knows, because they still have a supporting cast that needs some work, some help, and I don't know if they have enough this season. But one of those members of that supporting cast doesn't look like he'll have a future there next year and long term, and that's Kelly Oubre, who we heard a few weeks back in a post-game press conference talking after the trade deadline, as his name was floated around and possibly on the move, and he ends up staying. The Warriors have said that they want him moving forward and that he is potentially in their plans, but also they know, hey, they're getting Klay Thompson back next year. And when you get Klay Thompson back next year, there's not a starting spot for you. It's going to be Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Draymond, and Wiseman. That's the plan. So Kelly Oubre, if he's comfortable coming off the bench, there will definitely be a spot for you. But Kelly Oubre doesn't want to hear the noise about going to the bench or being a sixth man. He's a starter. He sees himself as a starter, which rightfully so. He's been a starter most of his career. He can put up numbers, but when you're on a team that will be this talented or get some guys back who are that talented. Klay Thompson's one of the best three-point shooters and defensive players in the NBA history and one of the best players in NBA history. you kind of fall back in line and you're not that spot. Well, apparently coming out of the Warriors, and Andrew Bogut said this on his podcast, Rogue Bogues, that he has it on good authority that they had an offer actually for Lonzo Ball and a throw-in pick, and the Warriors turned it down. But he thought that was a pretty good deal to shed some salary and get a pick back. So he's being told that the Warriors did have an offer for Kelly Oubre and they decided not to do it. Kelly Oubre went to Instagram and posted a photo of lots of caps saying that's cap or that's lies, that, hey, that's not true, that's not what's going on. But Andrew Bogut is pretty respected within the Warriors organization. I mean, he helped them bring a title. He was a big part of that championship team in 2015. And so you'd expect, he has probably pretty good connections. He's still friends with, I'm assuming, guys in that organization. I mean, you would assume maybe he's getting some intel from some pretty good source that some Warriors players, they weren't happy with exactly the Oubre's comments that he didn't want to come off the bench, that he sees himself as, hey, I'm a starter, I'm not anything less than that. And so it's interesting because now you're wondering, okay, well, if Kelly Oubre is creating this dysfunction in the locker room that players aren't happy with them, they're not thrilled that he's not willing to assume that role, well, why wouldn't you just trade him at the deadline then? If you know that there's a chance that you're going to lose him anyways in the offseason because he knows, the organization knows, and everyone knows that he's not going to be in the starting lineup next season when Klay Thompson's back. Now, again, I guess you can't assume Klay Thompson comes back just all right and normal, considering he's had now 2 season-long injuries and 2 major leg injuries, that, okay, it'll take him some time to get back to being the Klay Thompson of old. But make no doubt about it that if Klay Thompson is healthy come opening night of the 2021-2022 season, it's his starting spot. And there's no way around it. And you can't fault Kelly Oubre for thinking, well, I'm a starter. I want to go be a starter. And he's letting them know up front he wants to be a starter. But I think that the bigger thing is that's what contributes to part of this team, to where it's maybe that's where the issue lies. Is that you're looking at it and go, what do a lot of great teams have in common? They have guys that are willing to play a role. They know where they can help the team out the most, where maybe they could be a starter, but they choose to go through the bench route and kind of run that second unit or be the guy on the second unit or are comfortable with that. Because just because you're coming off the bench doesn't mean that you're not closing the game in the starting lineup. Now, I doubt Kelly Oubre would be closing the game in the closing lineup if Klay Thompson was back healthy. But you never know. I mean, look at Andre Iguodala with the Hampton 5. He came off the bench. He won an MVP coming off the bench in the finals. And so you look at those comments and you hear that it maybe rubbed some guys the wrong way in that locker room, that they let Kelly know that it bothered them, that they were upset. And you think, well, maybe that's where this dysfunction and this bad stretch of basketball is happening, and they don't have the same team chemistry that they're used to having. Now, whether it's true or whether it's just something that Bogut is hearing or someone's telling him, that's one person's feeling and maybe not the entire team's, it does add a layer to this whole situation with the Warriors and teams in general, that if you don't have the right chemistry, if you don't have everyone bought in that want to do what's best for the team or know that they will sacrifice whatever they have to for the team, then you're kind of screwed, right? I mean, you need everyone bought in, everyone to play a role on the team, and whether it be whatever it is, if they know what their role is and they're comfortable with it and they want to help contribute in that way and they're willing to do whatever they need to do for it, then you have a core that can win a championship fully healthy. If Kelly Oubre decided, hey, I'm cool with coming off the bench for this team, get Klay Thompson back, you have Thompson, Steph, Wiggins, Draymond, another year of Wiseman, and Kelly Oubre coming off the bench, that you would look at on paper as a solid 6, and that can compete with a lot of teams. But if you have an unhappy guy and he doesn't want to come off the bench, then you have no choice but to not bring him back because you don't want a distraught guy or an upset person coming in and being on that team and bringing down team morale or chemistry. And you look at a lot of these teams and who have won championships and won titles. I mean, James Harden for the Thunder came off the bench. He could have easily been a starter, but he came off the bench. And what happened was that the Thunder had to blow up that squad with sending James Harden away because he did want to be a starter. And so they moved off him, and they knew when the time was, hey, we got to move off this guy. Now, did they move off the wrong guy? Possibly. And you'll look back at the Thunder and think they missed an opportunity by not doing that, and he turned into one of the top players and won an MVP, obviously, and everything that went on with them. But Manu Ginobili coming off the bench provided that same type of ability for the Spurs and their dynastic run. Could he have easily been a starter? Of course, but he came off the bench, played his role as the sixth man, and he would close with the team and finish the game, but he still came off the bench. Carmelo Anthony, it changed his career with Portland. He turned it around and has accepted his role of coming off the bench and being a part of that. You need guys who are willing to play a role, be on the bench, and come in and do what's needed and provide that spark. And not everyone can do it. I mean, Lou Will's made a career of coming off the bench. He's the most points scored by a sixth man in NBA history is Lou Will. And he knows what it takes and is comfortable in that role for himself and doing that and being there. And some guys like Kelly Oubre maybe don't see it as, hey, I want to be that guy. But that also goes to the fact, does he want to be a winning player? Because if that's what's best for the team and is the best move for everyone and that gets them in that position of being a winning player, then that's what he'll do. And as of now, he stayed at least for this Warriors team that he doesn't see himself. He's not coming off the bench. He doesn't want to come off the bench next year, and that's okay. And at least the team knows that now, and will know that going into the summer and their negotiations. And you would imagine that means that he's not going to return for them. He won't come back, which is fine because, hey, if that's what he wants and he wants to do, there's nothing wrong with that. He doesn't have to go to any team that he doesn't want to play for. Now, if he was told, like, hey, you're going to be a starter, you're going to have a spot, and then he gets there and then he's forced to come off the bench and that's a whole nother issue, well, then that was bad. That's a bad look. That's you telling a player one thing and then going and turning your back and doing something different. But the fact that you look at Kelly Oubre and you think, does that hurt his market? This is a guy that's going to be a free agent. He's going to want a relatively big contract next year. But if you're a team and you know for a fact that, hey, this guy doesn't want to come off the bench, we're going to have to make him a starter, yeah, it might limit his market. And is he okay with that? Sure, it seems like he wants to get paid and he wants to be a starter. So he might go to a team that has no championship aspirations, that is just looking to sell some seats, play some games, and move it along. And if he's okay with doing that, then perfect. You can go out and sign that guy. But it doesn't sound like Kelly Oubre has really bought into a championship mentality of do what's best for the team or everything that needs to be done, I'll do. Because if he's already, before it's even happening, telling teams and people, I don't want to come off the bench, I'm not a bench guy, I'm better than that. Well, then if I'm a team that is a champion, I don't want him. I don't want that guy. I'll go find the guy that's less talented, that's willing to play in his role and be a part of the team and contribute where it's needed, than a guy who's going to be selfish and saying, nope, I'm a starter. That's it. End of day. End of story. Allen Iverson's career came to an end because he didn't want to come off the bench. Could he have played longer had he come off the bench? Of course he could have. Allen Iverson was one of the best players in the NBA. But as he got older and he wasn't the same guy, it was, well, I'm not coming off the bench, so I'm going to be done. I'm going to retire. I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'll play for a team that they can use me as a starter because I bring in eyes and tickets. But the fact Kelly Oubre is telling you this now, which teams should consider themselves lucky that they're hearing this now, because you don't want to get to a point where you're going for a guy and you think, oh, that's the piece that'll change everything for us. That's the guy we need to make everything happen and really turn our franchise around. And you get him and everything is wrong with him. Well, then you completely avoided disaster, because he told you straight up he's not coming off the bench. He doesn't want to be a bench guy. And so you're not going to waste your time with him. You're not going to go for him. Dennis Schroeder, it seems like he might be at that point of, with the Lakers, is he wants a big contract, and he kind of wants to see, he sees himself as a starter. And there's nothing wrong with guys having confidence and seeing themselves as starters. I think you have to have that confidence. It's like Draymond Green saying he's the best defender of all time. It makes a ton of sense. Like, if you don't have that level of mentality that you're the best and no one can stop you, well, then what are you doing? If you're I don't want to say wasting your time, but you should go in with the mentality that you're the best at anything. If whoever you are, it doesn't matter what you do. You want to go into it thinking, I'm the best. I have your value. Value yourself and know that your worth is this. But if there's an option to make, if you're a part of a team and there's an option to make your team better and everyone benefits, not just you, and it's all an ego thing, then what are you doing? Like, do what's best for the team. Why not help contribute to win? Because in the end, winning, especially in sports, the best thing you can do is win. I mean, yeah, all these guys are paid pretty solid, and no one's hurting for cash. And if you win, and it adds to your legacy. Now, if you're a guy who looks and goes, I don't really need a legacy, then that's fine. And it seems like Kelly Oubre is comfortable with being that guy of, well, I'm not trying to have a big legacy. I don't need to be a champion. He wants to get paid. He wants to start. He wants to play ball. And that's it. And fair to him. If I'm a GM, coach, owner, I don't want that guy on my team. I don't care how talented he is. If that's his mentality of it's me as a starter, that's it. Well, get out of here. And yeah, I can't. I would not be going for that. And that's just my own personal take is, miss me with that. Give me a guy who's going to come in and do everything he can to be a part of this team. And could Andre Iguodala have started for those Warriors teams all those years? Yeah, of course he could have. But he found his role as the sixth man, and it worked out perfect. And they thrived with it. They won championships with it. It kind of amazes me when you have these guys, and you can do it in any sport and throughout. And it's the guy who, I want to get paid. I want to be the big time. Well, you got paid. You're getting paid. Don't you want to win? Isn't it better when you have a quarterback that they want to get that big contract, and they get the big contract, and then they want that second big contract, and then they complain that they don't have enough weapons or they don't have enough talent around them? Well, yeah, because you're taking up most of, especially in a salary cap league, you're taking up most of it, but you're going to complain because you don't have enough around you? That makes no sense. You want to start? Okay, well, hey, Kelly, don't go to a team. Go sign with a team to where guys ahead of you are better. And that they deserve to be the starters. And you can be a really good role player, and it's not going to mean that you're not playing 25 minutes a game or 28 minutes a game. You're just not going to have your name called in the starting lineup. You're going to be first off the bench. You're not okay with that? You don't want that? That's degrading to you? You're better than that? All right, well then go play for the Rockets, because they're not going to be sniffing any playoffs anytime soon, and they could they'll add you and throw you in the starting lineup, because what else they got? Go play for the Timberwolves. Go play for those teams. Because if you want to be a starter so bad, you can go to one of those crappy teams and you'll start any day and you'll be on them and you'll be probably their leading scorer, but enjoy winning 12 games, 13 games, 14 games, whatever it is. and having fans not care to watch your games, as opposed to playing in postseason games, chasing titles, and being in those moments of legendary moments and being a part of that. Give me that guy who wants to be a part of that and take not even a lesser role, but a different role. His minutes probably wouldn't change that much, but he's not a bench guy. He's a starter. That is one of the worst things. And yeah, I'd be upset too if I was guys on that team. I'd be irked. I wouldn't want to play with that guy because clearly he's showing he doesn't want to do what's best for the team. So what's the point of bringing that guy in? Clearly he's looking for his next move. He's not committed here. He's not committed to this season or wanting to do what's best for the team. He may say it, but when he tells you, "Oh, I won't come off the bench." All right, well then, goodbye. Get out of here. We don't want you because you sure as hell aren't giving us enough to warrant demanding that you start. Yeah, that stuff. That's just not a winning mentality. That's just a me guy, and I'm out on the me guy. That's not my cup of tea. And some people they're okay with that, and that's fine. And there's teams that are going to be lining up to pay Kelly Oubre this offseason because he can play. He's good enough that people will be excited. But I just don't see him being on a winning team now because that whole I'm a starter, I'm not coming off the bench. I'm too good for that. Come on. Yeah, go enjoy winning 20 games max. Terrible. That drives me crazy. Just awful. But I want to transition and take a quick break here, and we'll get back into it, and I'll stop ranting about Kelly Oubre and the selfishness that comes with that mentality that he's showing, which is absurd to me. But I do want to get into some other teams, some other stuff that's gone on around the league and the weekend that it was and where things are standing and where things sit in the standings and what to expect for the rest of the season. We're getting down to the crunch time. It's nuts and bolts. Here we go. Hang on. Get ready. It's time to put up or shut up as we're approaching the playoff time. It's going to be here faster than we know. We're in April. May is going to be right around the corner. And then it's playoff time, and we'll see who's ready to go. So hang around. We'll be right back. It's the GSMC Basketball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you guys again for hanging around and tuning in with me and listening to what I got to say. Lots of great action over the weekend going on, some NBA, some the Final Four happened. We got the national title game going on today, so hopefully a great game going on with that. And Kelly Oubre's comments not sitting well with the Dubs. What are they going to be? What do they got left for the rest of the season? Because they're fighting right now, and they're fighting with a couple different teams. They're sitting in that 10 spot right now, which is the final spot for that play-in tournament. So you really got to make a move right now because you don't want to be, if you're the Warriors sitting in that 10 spot, you don't want to be fighting to the very end for the play-in tournament. You want to be at least climbing up, maybe get that 8 seed so where you're a little bit comfortable, you got some games to play with. But it's going to be interesting the rest of the way out right now because you have such a tight race for that 10th spot. Right now the Spurs in that 9 are 2 games up on the Warriors. And so you can look to that and go, okay, maybe can anyone else catch the Spurs? The Warriors need to get hot right now and get that going. The Lakers have been in a tough spot with Anthony Davis and LeBron James missing games, so they're still kind of trying to figure it out. They're sitting in the 5 seed. We've seen the Nuggets go on a nice stretch with the Aaron Gordon move, and they've really risen this last couple weeks, and with the last 10 games going 8-2. The Jazz continue to just be scorching hot, and they take on the Mavericks tonight, so we'll see what happens with that, and how is this Western Conference going to shake up? And over on the East, the East is seeing a whole bunch of movement going on. The teams are just jumping each other, going back and forth. We got the Hawks and the Heat at 4 and 5 seeds. They're tied right now with a 26 and 24 record each. And it's really a question mark of, okay, so how is this going to play out? How is it going to shape itself out? These teams seem like they're going to be jumping back and forth, beating up on each other, and really swapping spots in the standings for the rest of the season. You look at Boston, who's really struggled this year. They're coming off a big win over the Hornets, and they trail the Hornets only by a half game. So it's really just from here on out going in and trying to separate yourselves. I mean, the Raptors, who coming into the season you probably wouldn't have picked as a team that would have had to take part in the play-in tournament, they're sitting at that 11th in the standings right now, and only a half or a game back of the Bulls. Who the Bulls bringing in Vucevic, they really said that they wanted to try and pair Zach LaVine with someone to help them get to the playoffs and not necessarily make noise in the playoffs, but really just get in, show your star in Zach LaVine that you guys are committed to winning, making some changes. You're trying to do what you need to do to get him into a spot where he can really blossom in the playoffs. Because for LaVine, he's on the verge of being a superstar. I don't think he's there yet. He's still young and he still has a lot of ways to go. We've seen his skill. He's been one of those guys that's constantly moving up in terms of respect around the league. Many know him as, oh, well, he's the flashy dunker. He's the highlight reel. It's Zach LaVine, and it's nothing too crazy with them. But we've really seen this season in particular him just taking that next step. I mean, averaging 27.4 points per game now, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. He's really growing into a player, and now is the time where you're looking and you're going, okay, he just made his first All-Star game. Now is where you want to see, okay, what's next? What's that next step for him? Can he take a team to the playoffs? Once he gets to the playoffs, can he make some moves? And the Bulls really, by going and getting Vucevic, said, all right, we want to roll the ball in your court and say we got you a guy. You were waiting for Lauri Markkanen to kind of be that next partner in crime. Wendell Carter, it wasn't necessarily working out with them for him, LaVine, Markkanen, so they went and made a move and brought in Vucevic, and it's trying to see, okay, what's going to happen. It hasn't been wins right away right now. They just got their first win together this last weekend. So you'll see, can they continue to make moves, and can they continue to maybe climb up in the standings and get away from that 10th spot? They're only 2 games back of the 9. You saw the Knicks, the Knicks have been a surprising team this year. I don't think anyone picked the Knicks to make the playoffs. Julius Randle has had a career year. You're getting production throughout their lineup. And so now it's a question mark of, all right, so who's gonna outlast the other in this Eastern Conference? Because you have some teams. I'd expect the Raptors to figure it out enough and to get into that play-in tournament and be a playoff team. So does that mean the Bulls fall out? Well, the Pacers fall out. Knicks, Celtics, Hornets, they're all relatively close to each other. It's going to be back and forth. The top 3 seeds have clearly separated themselves. The Nets, Sixers, and Bucks are obviously the best teams in that conference, and it's not really close. And so even if you match up with them, it's probably not going to be too great for you. It's not going to be a fun time. But again, if you're one of those three teams, you don't necessarily want to see the Celtics. You don't necessarily want to see the Raptors get matched up with you because of the fact that these teams, while they're underperforming this year for various different reasons, and there's complications going on within the teams and their rosters, or issues beyond the fact that they're bad teams, because the Raptors and the Celtics, you wouldn't classify as a bad team. Now, are they having a tough year? For sure. I mean, look at what the Raptors have had to go through. They had a lot of COVID stoppages going throughout their roster. Not stoppages, but COVID going throughout their roster where they had to play without guys. They played without an entire coaching staff almost. You saw them. They're not even playing in their home stadium. They're in Florida. So it's basically been a road trip for them the entire season. They don't have their true home arena, place to stay. So it makes sense why it's been a tough season for them. They came off a dominant victory over the Warriors, winning by 50-plus points. They were up by 60 at one point in that game. And yeah, you go, granted, they didn't have Steph Curry in that game. But still, for the Raptors to put up those numbers and to do that, and they made the move for Gary Trent Jr. and sending Norman Powell away. They kept Kyle Lowry. So you could still look at that team and go, okay, they still have pieces to make a playoff push or be in the playoffs, or even if that's a team. I mean, you look at it, the Warriors on the West, where it's, if they do get into the playoffs or they are a part of the play-in tournament, you don't want to, that's not a team you want to match up against. If you look at Toronto, you can say the same thing for them. That's a team that has guys who have been there, done that, a head coach who has been the coach of the year, NBA champion. Pascal Siakam's a really good player. Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, they know how to win. If I'm any team on the East, I don't want the Raptors to be the team I match up against in the playoffs, especially in that first round. You'll be okay if it's in the second round, and you're like, all right, we can take that. But that first round, you don't want to scare like that. You'd rather it be the Bulls. You'd rather it be the Pacers or the Knicks. One of those teams where, yeah, it's a fun story for them that they got into the playoffs, and you congratulate them on making those strides. But if you're a Raptors team, or if you're the Celtics and you are in that 8 seed, you're looking to make an upset. You are looking, if you're that 7 spot, you are looking to surprise one of these top teams and show them, like, no, we weren't supposed to be in this spot. We kind of messed around. We had some stuff going on, and we ended up here. But in all reality, we are already actually a good team, and we should have been fighting for one of those top 4 seeds or the top 5. And so, yeah, the Raptors, you really look at them, and you just got to think, like, you don't want to match up against them in the playoffs. And I think there's a lot of teams like that if you're one of these top 3 teams, you just don't want to get paired up with in the playoffs. Now, for the West, there's still things to shake out. Who's going to be the top seed? The Suns are right on the heels of the Jazz, 2.5 games back, and so you look at that and you go, okay, well, if the Suns got the 1 seed, I don't think anyone had that happening this year. They made the move for Chris Paul, obviously in the hopes of being able to grow into this type of team. They wanted to get to the point of, they made strides last year in the bubble, finishing 8-0 and really showing people this team may be on that cusp of, all right, well, they have Devin Booker, who is becoming a superstar. What are they missing? And they went out and got CP3 to kind of run the show and let Devin Booker not have to do everything for that offense and kind of just play and be the guy that he's becoming. Let CP3 handle all the calls and let him handle getting everyone involved. And it's been just that. It's been working out tremendously for them. And DeAndre Ayton seems to have benefited from having CP3 there. Obviously, I mean, look at his track record with bigs and setting guys up and getting easy looks for them or easy dunks. And he's a magician with the ball. It's exactly what they brought him in for. But if the Suns were to finish with the 1 seed, I mean, Monty Williams is already probably the front runner for Coach of the Year, considering where this team's at from where they were a year ago. So you'd have to assume right there. But even Quinn Snyder, I mean, the Jazz, people, myself included, didn't think that much of the Jazz heading into the season, thought there would be some trouble from what happened last year. Their whole issues with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and the COVID that a year ago plus, kind of set those that ball rolling and shut down the league. So you look, and it'd be a fun battle to see the Suns and Jazz go 1-2, but we still all expect to have the Clippers, the Nuggets, and the Lakers kind of probably those top 3 teams in the West, no matter where they get seated at, wherever they kind of fall into, whatever they finish in the standings. The Lakers right now, obviously, without LeBron and AD, are struggling and can't really get easy wins. Games are tough. You're missing your 2 best players, and those 2 best players that are on your team also just happen to be the two of the best players in the league. So, of course, the Lakers are going to struggle. Kind of anticipated that once the injury was announced. AD should be getting back here. You'd imagine in the next 2 weeks, roughly, something around there. LeBron still has some time to heal up that ankle. And so for them, it's just a matter of, can you stay afloat? Can you stay away from that 7 spot? Can you be in the top 6 until they get back? Because if you're the Lakers, you definitely don't want to fall into a play-in tournament situation, and they're still games away from that position, and they're 2.5 up on the Mavs, and you want to avoid that as much as possible, because otherwise, I don't think it really matters for the Lakers where they finish off in the standings, as long as it's not the play-in tournament, just for the sheer fact that they don't want to play extra games. For Lakers, it's all about the health. The Clippers now, they're trying to find the chemistry and get right, and they just seems to be something off with them a little bit. Now, they did come off a big win over the Lakers. Granted, like I said, it was the Lakers without AD, without LeBron, and so you take that with, I don't want to say a grain of salt, but it's not the same as it had you beaten LeBron and AD Lakers. But again, a win's a win, no matter what. It's tough to win in the NBA, so you take every win that you'll take. You add that up, you go, yep, we got that done, perfect. But again, you should have won. You should have had a blowout win. Now you got to get Serge Ibaka back healthy, Patrick Beverley, those guys, and make sure that you're finding the right rotations for gearing up towards a playoff push and playoff run, because you anticipate for them it's championship or bust. That's all it is. There's no winning the regular season. There's no, we made it to the finals. No. It's win or bust. That's where it's at. That's where Kawhi Leonard is at. That's where Paul George is at. These guys are great players. And we've seen Kawhi win a title, so that's not in question. But the way it ended last year for the Clippers has left some question marks of, okay, well, what can this team really accomplish? What do they need to accomplish? Because if Kawhi left the Raptors after winning a title and went to the Clippers as opposed to going to some of these other teams, and Paul George, Kawhi specifically asked for Paul George, and they made the trade, and they mortgaged their future for winning now, well, then you have to win now, and so we'll see what happens with them. And obviously, a big thing is they're going to need to stay healthy and get their guys back and make that push. And for Denver, who didn't start the year off too great, it was rough, and they have Jokic now, who is probably the MVP frontrunner. Many are stating they think he's been phenomenal. He's the best big man in the NBA, and since that Aaron Gordon deal, it kind of worked out to where he's helped them a lot and opened up some spots for them and spacing, and he's cutting to the basket very easily and getting some open dunks and helping their defense. So they've really turned around. 8-2 in their last 10 games is going to do that for you. And this is a team, it was just last year, they made it to the Western Conference Finals, and it was thought, okay, well, have they finally figured out? Have they finally made the strides they needed? And coming into this year, it was expectations of, okay, we've seen you get to the Western Conference Finals. Well, now you have to get to the NBA Finals, because you can't go backwards. Or at least you can't go backwards dramatically. If they made it to the Western Conference Finals again and maybe pushed to a Game 7, you go, okay, well, that's another strides. They made it back. But a first-round exit would be horrible. that would be a big step backwards. And they're not going to miss the playoffs, but early on it was a struggle, and you thought, ooh, if this West is really that tough, then it's going to be a battle, uphill climb for them. And the move for Aaron Gordon has really helped this team, and so they're looked at, they're a dangerous threat. I mean, everyone in the West is essentially a threat. This is a season where, you have the Jazz leading the pack, and the Suns right there, but there's no, especially with the question mark of LeBron and Anthony Davis' health, you'd say there's not a clear-cut, this team is pencil them in right away. Last year we could pencil in, we thought we could pencil in before the shutdown happened in the bubble and the restart. You had Lakers, Clippers, Western Conference Finals. Now one team made it there, and the other one, obviously, the Clippers blowing the 3-1 lead, didn't make it there. But this season, especially, I mean, the two, let's call them heavyweights of the Lakers and Clippers, have been anything but smooth, and many factors happen. And obviously, you look at the Lakers' health and the fact that they had the shortest offseason of any of the teams. It was bound to drop a bit. And again, for that team, it's only one goal and only one thing matters, and they don't care where they're at in the standings and what goes on in the regular season. And for the Clippers, it was, again, trying to figure out, all right, well, how do they go about repairing what happened last year? Trez was gone. Lou Williams, they ended up trading him at the deadline and kind of clearing out some things that brought the team down last year, with guys questioning Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and thinking, well, what have you really done? Like, because Paul George, you've never made it to a final. You came in like you had, but you hadn't. And so it seems like they're kind of starting to figure out where they stand. They've made some improvements. Nicholas Batum has been a nice addition in the offseason, and he's really played well this year. They just traded for Rajon Rondo. They got DeMarcus Cousins, who we'll see if Cousins does provide them with a lot. I don't necessarily see him as a huge factoring piece, but I mean, it's a nice guy to have. I mean, he's a good player. He's not the same Boogie that he once was because of all the injuries, but you hope for Boogie that he is able to figure some things out, and he is able to play healthy and get back to even a part of the player that he was. So for these last couple weeks of the regular season, it's going to be a lot going on. It's a great time. The college basketball season's coming to an end after tonight, and so we'll have NBA front and center for basketball, and it's all we're going to be worrying about now. You don't have the March Madness or the tournament going on to distract you. It's locked in eyes, basketball time's here. Let's see how these teams finish up. There's going to be a lot of playoff positioning battling and seeing who's for real and who's not, and who made the moves that were right. We've seen some of the buyouts start to happen. There won't be too many more, I'd imagine. Drummond's down with the Lakers, although he's out. And again, that team, they just can't catch a break with the injuries, it seems like, but it shouldn't be too much for him. Blake Griffin seemed to find new life with the Nets. Maybe he was, I don't want to say faking anything with Detroit, but wasn't in any rush to get out there. So thank you again, guys, for hanging around. Keep on listening. Keep on tweeting at me. Let me know at _GSMC _basketball at Mr. _Meowser. Text me, or not text me, but tweet me. Give us a like, give us a retweet, give us a share. Send us out. Send us whatever you want me to talk about. Let me know. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. We'll be back Thursday with the next episode. But for now, enjoy all the basketball action we have, and let's finish the season strong. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.